maybe. As if it's not gonna work, I'll just switch to the phone in 1 minute. Okay?
Okay, يلا.
Yalla, bye.
Okay.
I think I went live. I'm live. Hi, am I live? If you can see me, please say hi in the chat. Hi, everybody. I'm hoping that I'm live. I'm hoping that this worked. And I am hoping I have two people watching. Hi. If you can see me, please click hi, send hi in the chat. I am live. Hi, Gino. I am going to just as we are talking to each other, I'm just going to copy this link and share it to my own Facebook and to my own pages so many people can come and say hi. Thank you so much for coming over this morning, and thank you so much for this afternoon, I guess, for the folks in Ottawa. And thank you so much for joining me. I am really thankful that Max Ottawa has invited me to come over and to talk for a bit. I feel like I'm not even sure that many people know who I am, so I'm just going to go ahead and introduce myself. My name is Ahmed Dani Ramadan, but you can definitely call me Dani. I am a Syrian-Canadian award-winning author and LGBTQ activist. I wrote a book called The Clothesline Swing. It's right here. I The book was released by Knightwood Editions in 2008 and 17, almost to the day actually. It was released on the 12th of May 2017. The book has been a blessing, honestly. It got quite successful, and I'm going to read from it today. I'm going to also show you some things. This is my office, by the way. Welcome to my office. Hi. I'm going to show you some things. This is the Hebrew cover of the book. I think it goes this way. This is the Hebrew cover of the book. This is the French version of the book, and soon it is going to be also available in German. I shared the cover on my Twitter. So, I guess I have a good hour with you folks, and I would hope that you will interact with me. I really don't want to be talking to my window, so if you can please and thank you. If you like something that I said, say great. If you didn't, keep that to yourself. If you have any questions about writing, about publishing, about being an author, about narrative, hit me up. I would love to hear your questions. And then I am going to spend some time reading from the Clothesline Swing today, as well as I have a short story that won the Fiddlehead contest for fiction couple of 6 months ago, I would say, maybe a year ago. Yes. So it's called My Name Is Bridge. I'm going to read a couple pages from it, and also I'm going to read a never seen before short story, also the first couple of pages of it, called The Tale of Raja and His Geckos. So we are in for a beautiful hour this afternoon, and I hope you are going to enjoy it. Also, David McMillan. Hi, David. He just posted an evaluation form, so I'm going to remind you of that at the end again. If you can click on that evaluation form, it will help Max Ottawa better their services, make sure that folks are having all the support that they need. And thank you to Mo and David for hosting me today. Let's go into this. I think this is going to be a lot of fun. Oh, and this is another cover of the Clothesline Swing. It's the release in the UK cover, which I like quite a lot. Also, they have a better picture of me in the back. I looked much thinner before all of this happened. This quarantine thing is not working well for me, not at all. Anyway, so the Clothesline Swing tells the story of two queer men from Syria who left Syria, came to Vancouver, grew older in Vancouver, and found home, found belonging here. But at the same time, they still felt longing back to their homes, to their lives. The book tries its best to showcase that. Um, it's just Syria and Canada are completely two different cultures, but there's not a better culture. Both cultures have its beauty, have um, their traditions, their heritage that allows it to be equal and wonderful in each way. One other thing that I love about the writing the Clothesline Swing is that I truly believe that showcasing two queer men of color um, enjoying each other's company, being partners, falling in love is in its way an act of resilience. So I am going to read as my start a love scene between those two men. Our morning coffees on my balcony were frequently interrupted by the shouts and screams of army officers and the police, running after another person to arrest. They would pull the prisoner's shirt and drag him to the ground while the woman and his family wailed in agony from their windows, tightening their white scarves upon their heads. The prisoner would be pushed into the trunk of the car under the eyes of gazers, among them you and me, before they locked the trunk on him and drove away. The first time we saw that scene, our hearts bounced and we hid in my bedroom for 2 hours. After a couple of arrests, we got used to the screaming and the wailing, and we just returned to our morning coffees and turned the radio back on. I lost count of how many times we woke up at 3 o'clock in the morning to the sound of distant explosions coming from the other side of the city. The calm of the streets carried the sounds of war swiftly to our ears and woke us both up, frightened and lonely. You whined one night, half asleep, pulled out of your land of dreams, worrying that the explosions were too close to us. I brushed your hair with my fingers, calming you down. It's fireworks. It's just the sound of fireworks, I whispered, and you went back to sleep. One night was the ex- One night the explosion was too close. It shook the apartment and woke us both up. We heard the explosion and thought it might have happened right outside our building. It was followed by the sound of machine guns rushing through the streets. We crawled on all fours as we escaped the exposed bedroom to the windowless bathroom. I laid down in the bathroom tub and you rested your body upon mine. Your eyes were wide open like small white dishes. You shivered and started to bite your lips. I got you, I whispered, and hugged you closer until the sound of machine guns morphed into an unrecognizable noise. That night in the tub, I made love to you. I made love to you as if I were reciting poetry about the beauty of Damascus. I woke your senses with opening lines and flirtatious gestures, sneaking into your word like the first drops of sun rays on the mountains of Damascus. I colored your face with the shades of sunrise as I pulled on your earlobes with my teeth. I roamed the corners of your body like a lost traveler, exploring the old sleepy streets of the city, knocking on the doors of your soul with the tips of my fingers, like a shy delivery boy, knocking on the wooden doors of old homes in Saruja. Carrying warm bread and baladi cheese, I turned your body around and tickled your feet, and you laughed like a child riding the Wecha in a Gillette amusement park. I murmured whimpers of pleasure in your ears, like the sighs of an old wooden bridge aching under the pressure of the souls it carries. I joined my body with yours and we moved as if we were sliding up and down the hills of the waving roads of Al Muhajireen. I printed breathless kisses on your forehead while I let your body slip away from mine, covered in my bite marks and glorious sweats. By the time we opened the bathroom door and returned to bed, the sounds of machine guns fire was long gone. All right, so that was one of the first things that I'm going to read for you. I'm going to read some more. Again. I remind you, if you have questions, if you have anything that is interesting that you want to say, I see all the comments right now. I say hi to Vincent if you are still there. Hi, Muhammad. Hi, Dino. Hi, Dino. I'm going to read some more, but please, if you have questions, hit me up. So, as you can see, I have all of those signs for all the things that I want to read. I learned that from Andrea Eichmann. He's Eichmann. He's the author who wrote "Call Me by Your Name." I met him in Israel. I met him in Israel a year ago, actually almost to the date as well. Lovely human being. Actually, I have a funny story about that. Matthew and we were staying in this hotel in Tel Aviv, no, in Jerusalem, and I had to leave the hotel every day at like 7:30 in the morning because I had to go for like events and things. While Matthew was leisurely, Matthew is my husband by the way. While Matthew was leisurely waking up every morning, having his coffee on the balcony, enjoying his life, having the best vacation ever. And then Mr. Matthew there got to know this like Jewish older man who was staying in the hotel room next to us. And they ended up hanging out and talking and stuff like that. And then like 4 days later, after I kept hearing about the Jewish older man that Matthew became friends with, Matthew introduced me finally, and I'm like, that's Andrea Eichmann. He is the author of Call Me by Your Name. He literally won all the awards. He is amazing. And Matthew's like, oh, I've never met before. So that's that for you. Anyway, let's go back to this book, this lovely book. I'm going to read you a scene about Damascus. So I get the question quite a lot if this book is based on my real life story, and I don't know. There are things in this book that are based on my real life story, but there are things in this book that are totally fabricated, and I don't think authors should be forced into answering those questions. I think that authors should be able to tell their life stories if they want to through books and navigate their own traumas through books without having to say out loud in front of an audience if they are if they bring their own life into their fiction. That's something that I pay therapists for. Anyway, this, however, is something that is based a bit on my personal life. So here we go. I am reading from chapter 9, The House with the Belvedere. I was born in my grandfather's house in Damascus. My father was 19 and my mother was 17. He heard my mother's scream. He heard a short, snappy cry and saw the midwife leave the room holding a blanket, covering a red being that made fake gestures with its hands. Pray in his ears, the midwife whispered. Kabbir in his ear. My father, young, silly, unaware of what awaits him, held my body and whispered in my ear, Allahu Akbar, Allahu Akbar. Allah is great. In the mid-80s, you would only hear those Allahu Akbars spoken outside of mosques when a baby was born or when they were screamed out loud as a sign of total astonishment. For example, when my uncles watched a football match on the old static TV, they would throw things in the air and scream Allahu Akbar when their favorite team scored. The next evening, one of them would be sitting with friends who had all seen the same match, smoking argile under the white neon light of a cafe in Old Damascus. They would be drinking tea, and my uncle would be telling his friends about the goal they all had seen the night before. We weren't sure we'd make it, ya zalame, he would say. Suddenly, Allahu Akbar, we won. The meaning of words changes with time. 30 years later, Allahu Akbar scares the word and injects fear into the hearts of millions. Dark featured fighters carrying long swords were beheading people while screaming Allahu Akbar with the same amusement my uncles felt for their football matches. I remember a Ramadan night I spent in my grandfather's house. I remember the laughter of Ramadan as we gathered around the iftar table. We always prayed together first. O my Allah, for thee I fast, and with the food thou givest me I break my fast, and I rely on thee, my grandfather said, and we all replied with a loud, deep Ameen. In the name of Allah, the Beneficiary, the Merciful, O He whose indulgence is boundless, forgive me, he adds. And we repeated it behind him. Once I tried to speak it too fast. I was hungry and ready to devour the feast in front of me. I reached out for a piece of bread and I was faced by an angry look from my grandfather. So I took my sinful hand back. During my shorter days of fasting, my mother relied on me to be the decision maker on the taste of the food. She called my name and I came running to the kitchen where she and 2 or 3 other women were gathered. Taste this, she said, stuffing a spoonful of hot soup into my mouth. Does it need more salt? I personally hated salt. She loved it. Nope. It's perfect, I said, enjoying the hot taste burning the tip of my tongue. Great, she said, adding more salt to the soup. It seemed to me that I stayed up very late. It seemed to me that I stayed up very late that night. I must have slipped into dreamland long before midnight. At 3 a.m., a loud knocking from the streets awakened us. Limsahar, my Teta Samira said, opening the door to our small room. Who wants to see Limsahar? The cold pinched my little face. When I opened the window that looked over the narrow streets outside, an old man appeared from afar. He was wearing a traditional Syrian sherwal pants, a black jacket, and a red fez. He held the little drum near his chest, knocking on it 5 times in front of each house. Wake up for your suhoor, let the month of Ramadan visit you, he sang loudly under each door, calling people to eat the pre-fasting meal. Abu Muhammad, wake up for your suhoor. The minute the Msahhar's silhouette was close enough to see the details, I saw his son walking sleepily behind him, holding a small lamb. I stood inside the warm wooden house of my grandfather where I was born, as were my father and his father before him. I looked up as the man walking by ignoring me. I looked up as the man walking by ignored me, calling out for more people to wake up before the light of his son's lamp dimmed. The smell of fried eggs mixed with a spoon of flour and the sounds of life behind me took me back inside. My grandfather's house isn't there anymore. The old Damascene house with its own fountain of silver shining water and its forever smell of jasmine was destroyed by the government in 1989 to expand a Thawra Street. My grandfather took his wife, Samira, his 6 sons, his only daughter, his daughter in law, and me, and moved us to a small countryside house on the last hill that the government hadn't seized from him yet. My grandfather lived for 2 years in the hill home. He was not he was never happy with the new house, complaining that it was too cold, or too hot, or too smelly. I think he just missed the place that he had called home for all of his life. He remained unhappy until he died. All right. So I hope you enjoyed that as well. Again, I remind you, folks, your novel creates. Hi, Muhammad. Your novel creates so much visuals. Are we going to watch Clothesline Swing on the big screen? Do you have contacts in any production company that might be interested? I cannot. I honestly. I hope so. It's funny because I was actually, let's talk seriously for a sec. I don't think the Clothesline Swing would work on the big screen. I'm recording the audiobook, the Clothesline Swing audiobook at the moment, and I'm realizing because I wrote this book in 2012, like I wrote it 8 years ago, and I'm realizing slowly but surely that this book has a lot of focus on the lyrical language, on bits of story, on short stories mixed together into one big narrative. Um, Meaningful, important scenes, but none of them. But it doesn't actually have like a full-on narrative. It doesn't have a 2 hours movie kind of narrative. Um, I'm working on my next book, and my next book is called The Foghorn Echoes. And The Foghorn Echoes, I think, has a much more realized narrative, let's say, a much more understandable, like track understandable. Is that even a word? Trackable narrative that you can look. It's more linear. It's more understandable. So, understandable is the right word. So, so I'm hoping that that book might work. Oh, hi, Simi. Hi, Habibi. Wonderful to hear you read. Thank you. Appreciate it. Hi, Gary Dort. This is awesome. Can't wait to read this book. Judge it lightly. Thank you. All right. Um, Let me read one more time from the Clothesline Swing, and then we move on to more other kind of readings. How about that? All right, let's do that. Cool. What should I read for you? What should I read for you? I have the thing called Mariam. So, Mariam. Mariam is one of the main characters of the book. She is a lesbian woman who lives in Damascus, and she meets the main character in Damascus. The two of them end up becoming very close friends. The main character at the moment in this part of the narrative lives on his own across the city in a place called Qudsiya. For those who know Syrian politics, and for those who are Syrians watching this, they know that Qudsiya was one of the very first Damascene suburbs that ended up seeing a lot of clashes. Mariam is on the phone having a conversation with my main character. His name is Hakawati. His nickname is Hakawati. I never actually mentioned his real name. Hakawati literally means storyteller in Arabic. Um, so he is talking about Mariam for a bit, and then we are going to hear about their phone call. One evening, she took me to the room of a gay friend of hers. He rented it in an old Damascene home in Saruja. The room had a wooden ceiling with a column in the middle carrying the weight of the years the ceiling had to endure. We smoked hash and cigarettes. Then she left me alone with her friend when she realized that we had spent the last couple of hours flirting. She waited in her car smoking a cigarette after a cigarette and reading Paulo Coelho's The Alchemist while I drowned my face in the tattoo-covered back of her friend. She texted me, telling me to take your time, explained that she really enjoys spending a lot of times in her car parked on Thora Street. In reality, She really did. She watched the city changing colors like a bride on her wedding day, from the white, sunny afternoons to the red evening lights. The next day, she parked her car under her favorite tree at the entrance of her university and returned to find the car aflamed. The car next to it exploded, and the explosion killed 6 people, destroying her car and setting her favorite tree aflame, on fire. She once stayed on the phone with me, and I sat alone in my house while a battle between the regime forces and the rebel forces took place outside my house. She heard me whisper what I thought would be my final words. I was crying, she was crying, the whole thing was extremely melodramatic. I had bought myself a bottle of whiskey, thinking that I was brought myself a bottle of whiskey that I was planning to drink with her the day after, and I ended up drinking the whole thing on my own. Power has been gone for 2 hours by then, so the ice in the freezer has melted ages ago. I didn't care. By 3 a.m., I was completely wasted. I'll go out and ask them to stop fighting, I told her on the phone. And she asked me if I gone insane. No. I just think that if I went outside and I politely asked them to stop fighting, they might consider it. I explained. I want to sleep. I cannot sleep while they're killing each other outside. I just need to sleep. When I met her for coffee the next morning, I made her promise never to repeat that conversation again. Alright, so that's it for the Clothesline Swing. I feel like I read for the last, I don't know, half an hour about it, and I know that I am personally looking forward. I love this book, I really do. It's my son, it's my child, and I adore the success that it got me, but at the same time, I just love the book. It was a very therapeutic experience to write it, I think. But I honestly cannot wait for you to see my next work. Just because, as an artist, as a perfectionist when it comes to my writing, I want you to see where I am with my art. So speaking of which, I am going to put the Clothesline Swing on the side, and Joelle, hi Joelle, thanks for this. I have the French translation of your book and really enjoyed it. Those stories are so important. Oh, thank you, Joelle. I'm glad you enjoyed it. I really appreciate that. Thank you, my friend. You're talking about this. Yeah, I don't speak French, so I'm not going to butcher the title, but they had to change the title from the Clothesline Swing to the Jasmine Swing, I'm assuming. And and I'm happy with it because apparently it's a fantastic translation, and I hope you enjoyed it. All right, let me put those away. This is the end of the Clothesline Swing, and I have another question apparently. You carry and bring little Syria within your novel. Is that intended, or you felt homesick and decided to put that feeling on paper? I love that question. Coffee, anyone? All right. That's a very deep question. That's a very deep question, I think. I'm always homesick to Syria. I have elements of Syria in my life all the time. Like, you see, my backgammon is behind me, and I bought that in Damascus ages ago. We have a piece of fabric hanging in the living room that is from Syria. I adore eating Syrian food. I think you have a similar thing in Ottawa, but we have a group of Syrian women here called Taiba, came together after they immigrated here, and they started their own business cooking Syrian food, and I think that I am their biggest client. I eat so much food from them. So yes, of course, like as a human, as a person, I do miss my hometown. I miss Damascus quite a lot, and I think that there is a balance that needs to happen there, because you can love something but be critical of it. I'm gay. I'm a queer person, and I think the whole world knows that by now. Um, and of course, I'm very critical of the situation um, for LGBTQ folks in Damascus. I hear the horror stories. I've been through some horror stories. I got arrested in Damascus for my queerness. Um, so I'm critical of that, of course. But at the same time, I look at my childhood, about who I am and what made me the author I am, the activist that I am, the person I am. And yes, like, there were some really difficult challenges, but at the same time, Damascus is the place where I learned to speak the first time. I read books the first time. I climbed a tree. I wore shorts. I'm actually wearing shorts right now. I don't wanna, I don't wanna see that. It's the place where I felt loved for the first time, and when I loved someone for the first time. I kissed a boy for the first time in my life in Syria, and that was a thing. That was really a cool thing. Um, so, of course, I'm connected with Damascus as a human, as a person. As an author, when I wrote the Clothesline Swing, I didn't mean um, to write it as an homage to Damascus that was, or whatever dramatic thing that some of the reviews called the book. I just was going through a very challenging experience, an experience where I was a refugee in Lebanon. I was coming to a brand new country here in Canada, and I needed to navigate those emotions, and I navigated them by writing this book. So that, I think, is how I wrote this book, and I think it came from an authentic place, which in turn allowed it to be authentically felt by folks who read it. If I'm finalizing my next novel, and one thing that I worked really hard on doing while writing the novel is that I did not write the novel with a social activist goal in mind. I did not write the Foghorn Echoes, my next novel, because I want to show Syria for what it really is, or I want to explore the refugee experience the way that it is. I wrote the book because it's a good story to tell, and it's authentically felt. Um, it's true to the characters. I dig deep into my characters, and I know so much about them, so I would tell you this like full 3D story of what a character is. I feel like I mumbled and rambled and went all over the place with this question, but yeah, like, I think just to summarize what I just said, when I wrote the Clothesline Swing, and when I write all of the things that I write, I try my very best to be as authentic as possible. Cool. Let's talk short stories. Let's talk short stories. Ba-ba-dum, bum-bum. Again, if you have questions, I'm more than happy to answer them. I don't want you to be sitting here and just like watching me read. I think it will be weird. Um, if you were in my living room, which would no, this is my den. But if you are in my den with me, I assume that we will having conversations. So keep them coming. Ask me more and more. So the fiddlehead is the largest Western Canada literature magazine. I think they acknowledge that themselves. I hope I'm quoting them correctly. Bum, ba-dum, bum, bum, bum. Maybe. Anyway, they're really cool. They're fantastic folks, and they have an annual contest for fiction, which I submitted to a couple of years ago. So I am really thankful that the short story that I submitted, called My Name is Bridge, is won the fiction award for the 2019 contest. It means a lot to me because this story is the opening story for the collection of short stories that I'm working on at the moment. So, so the fact that it won an award as I'm preparing it to be published in a collection of short stories on its own means a lot to me. It means that I am recognized, I am growing, and yeah. All right, I see a lot of questions. Those are fantastic. I am going to go back to Joel's question and Simi's question in a couple of minutes. Let me just read from My Name is Bridge and then go back to the question. Yep. Cool. Awesome. I assume you all agree. All right. My name is Bridge. Mother told me my grandmother has lost her mind. She stood in the moonshine for too long and wandered up into the ocean of stars so deep it was hard for her to find her way back. She was swallowed whole by the myths of the past one night, and never could be retrieved. Kharrafet, my mother said, she lives in the land of fables now. Mother told me not to follow my grandmother to the rooftop on the day of the eclipse. But the banging was too loud. I heard the banging coming from above, and I snuck out of the house, curious and filled with fear. I climbed the stairs, guided by the endless knocking coming from above, and I found her standing there with a shawl on her back, lifting the kitchen pot up in the air, as far as her arm can reach, and holding a wooden spoon and knocking on it as loud as she possibly could. Neighbors looked out from the windows of mounting buildings, enraged by the noise coming from our dwarfed house. My grandmother stood, her left breast bare and her white hair glimmering under the dimmed sunlight, humming to the imagined tune she played on the pot. What are you doing? I asked, and she explained that Nanar, the Assyrian goddess of the sun, is angry. She hides the sun to remind her worshippers that she could bring darkness to this world. Nanar scared me. I picture her a winged woman riding a horned ox of fire and ice, opening her unhinged jaw and sucking the sun dry of warmth and fire, turning the old star blue. I ran back to the house to hide in my little room. My heart is bounding. My face was red. I saw the sun disappeared slowly behind a dark disk, and I wondered if this is the ballad of Nanar's mouth, round and open and toothless and ready to take away our guiding star. I brought my birthday doll for moral support. I tucked her under my armpits. I ran to the kitchen. I fetched a cooking pot and a wooden spoon, and I rushed to the rooftop. Ignoring my mother's calls, I banged on my cooking pot right next to my grandmother, and she banged louder, our arms extending to the skies like praying worshippers. We swirled in circles like the dervish I saw in the Umayyad mosque. We sang a song of war I knew not the lyrics to, and we shouted a primitive shout hidden in the back of my head since I was born. Slowly, the dark mouth in the sky retreated, and the warmth was back to the surface of earth. I felt proud of myself. My grandmother messed with my hair, smiling. All right, so that was the opening of My Name is Bridge. It's a good 15 pages of a short story, so I wouldn't be able to read the whole thing, but that was an opening of it. There's a lot of navigation in the collection of short stories, which I'm hoping to finish before the end of the year and send it to my agent by then. In the collection, there's a lot of navigation of identity, excuse me, there's a lot of navigation of identity, of religion, um, as well as sexuality. Um, Most of my characters, all of my characters actually so far, are folks who are living in Damascus, navigating the war, while also navigating the complex identities, the complex issues that um, that flare up during the time of war. Um, yeah, one thing that I'm really happy about in the collection is also I'm trying to revive an interest in the Assyrian gods. Assyria is the nation that started 8,000 years ago in the region I come from. So it started in Syria, Iraq, Lebanon, Jordan. That was the land of Assyria. Um, Ashuriyin, they are called in Arabic, and they have gods similar to the Greek gods. So they have Ashur, which is Zeus, but he's also the god of war. They have Nanar, which is the goddess of the sun. They have a lot of Ashtar, which I believe is the goddess of beauty, the goddess of water. So all of those gods are coming into my short stories as if they are actual gods who live among us. Dum, da, da, dum, dum. So the collection of short stories, which is tentatively titled, it's a working title, the Syrian Survival Notebook. Hopefully will be out in a year or two, and you will read all about that. Now, I see that I have a lot of comments. I love comments. Send me all the comments. Thank you, Robert. I'm glad that you are interested in hearing those stories, or else I'll be just talking to myself, I guess, in my den. Because I'm crazy. Simi. I'm sorry if I'm pronouncing your name incorrectly. Simi. Alright. Does writing in English sometimes make you feel split or limited? Hmm. That's a great question. I love it. I'm just going to have some coffee. Hmm. Yay, coffee. um, I think there is a study, there's an actual scientific study, I'm not making up this. There's an actual scientific study that showed that people who speak multiple languages have different personalities according to the language they're speaking in. So, people who are speaking, say, Arabic and English, like myself, you are one person in Arabic and a different person in English. And that's not just because there are two different spots in your brain that control this language or that, but also because the way you learned Arabic and the way that you learned English are completely different. And the culture that responds to Arabic and the culture that responds to English are completely different. So I'm very introverted socially when I speak English. I don't actually like people. No, I love people. I just don't like talking to people, I guess. I feel like I work really well one on one. So I really enjoy my friends, my one on one meeting with people, even one on one meeting with strangers I've never met before are all great. But then when there are four or five people together, I get like overwhelmed. In Arabic, on the other hand, I strive quite well in big gatherings. Like I am more comfortable when there are like 10 to 15 people around and they're all speaking in Arabic and they're talking over each other and those three are talking together and those two are talking together. It's 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 just a different personality, and I think that's because Arabic comes from a culture that is way more dramatic, for a lack of a better word, way more connected, way more loud and emotional, while English is coming from a place of politeness, a place of calmness, I would say, a place of coldness, not in an emotional way, not in a bad way, but in a more soothing way, say. I just alienated all the English speakers in the room. I think so. All of that is to go around and round and round and say that I don't feel limited. I do, however, feel split. So I feel like the writer in English, the way that I write in English is completely different than the way that I write in Arabic. That's why I don't actually write in Arabic and then translate. I actually write in English, and then when I write in Arabic, I actually write in Arabic. But the fact of the matter is that if you put my Arabic writing on one side and my English writing on the other side, there are two different styles. There are two different narratives. They have two different interests. I'm way more interested in writing poetry in Arabic than fiction, while while I suck in poetry in English. Poetry in English just is not crossing my mind. I have no idea how to fix that. All right. Um, dum 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 dum. Joel is asking a question. Writing is such a vulnerable act. What helped you feel free enough to write your story in your own way? Oh, that's a really good question. Wow. Dum dum dum. I love that question. Wow. I never thought about that. It's not one of the I have a Rolodex in my brain. I just like, oh, that question, I heard that before. I grab the answer and I give it. But you folks are coming up with the most interesting questions. Hi, Joel. Um, hmm. I think it's funny because the Clothesline Swing, when I wrote it, I didn't know it will be published. I had no idea if anybody else other than myself is going to read that book. Even my ex, my boyfriend at the time, didn't want to read that book. So, but we don't talk about the devil. So, anyway, so I think what made it really easy for me to write from a vulnerable place when I wrote the Clothesline Swing is the fact that I did not know that that book will ever be read by anybody else but me. It felt like I'm writing in my own diary, and it felt private and personal, and it allowed me to write whatever the hell I wanted to write. The decision that I wanted to publish that book came almost a year after I actually finished writing the book. And yeah, that's why that book was a very vulnerable book. At the moment, I'm struggling with that as I'm writing the Foghorn Echoes. I'm struggling with that because it is such a balance to write a vulnerable character while also um, write a vulnerable character while also hold the reader's respect for that character. Vulnerability is such a like a balance act. It's like a tango dance. It has to be the perfect amount of vulnerability while also showcasing how strong and self-respectful that vulnerable character that you have. I don't want to write trauma porn. I don't want to write stories that will make people cry and then feel sorry for Syrian refugees or Syrians in total, in general. I want to write stories where people read and they're like, "Yep, that was a hard life, but that character really came through on the other end and really stood up for themselves." So yeah, it's interesting that sometimes I have to remind myself that I have to go into the vulnerable space. I have to look at that, knowing that this book is probably going to be published, um, and accepting that sometimes as a writer, you have to open your heart to the people and let people decide what to do with it. Yeah. All right. We have 10 more minutes that I'm going to talk to you, and I believe I still have a couple of questions. Ba-da-da-da. Dole for moral support. Yes, I know, right? You put it under your armpit just because. Yes, so interesting. I never knew that. But again, I know nothing about Syrian culture. Get to know Syrian culture, Robert. Syrian culture is so freaking amazing. There is this book right here. Hold on. I'm so happy I get to do this in my office because I can be like, oh, this book. Um, this is a very interesting book called Myths and Legends of Babylonia and Assyria. It's by Lewis Spencer, and it was written in the 1900s. It was written in like 1992 by this dude who just like traveled Syria for years and collected all of that historical material. It is so good if you are nerdy like me. Just read the whole thing. Also, there are so many books that are interesting about Syria that you should read. There is a book by Deborah Campbell called A Disappearance in Damascus that is really interesting. There is also a book called The Daughter of Damascus by Siham Tirmen, which is translated to English, so you will be able to find it. In Arabic, Bint Shem. So if you would rather read it in Arabic, you can find it there. Any tips for folks who wants to write their first novel? Take classes. Take lots of classes. Writing a novel is a hard job. Like, it's interesting how many times I meet people being like, I have a great idea for a novel, and then those folks never actually produce that novel, and they tell me their ideas, and I'm like, oh my god, that is a fantastic idea. That is an idea that will be successful. But folks never actually take the next step, because sitting down and writing 80,000 words in a one word document that makes sense seems scary as hell. So of course you're going to be like, I don't know what to do with this. Yeah, so take classes. Take classes about writing your first sentences. Take classes about creating a novel structure. Sit down with yourself and write the whole story on a board in front of you. And see how it flows. Does it make sense? Take as many classes as possible. There are a lot of free classes online. I have news that I'm not allowed to say anything about, but you will find a lot of classes on a lot of things that are interesting on my Facebook soon enough. So also to watch those. I want you to write your first novel. I think that a lot of people have a fantastic idea for a first novel, and it should come alive. It should be put into light, writing. Specifically, that I know the person who asked the question, Muhammad, you are Syrian, and I'm tired of being the only Syrian Canadian on this freaking platform. Please, I need some other Syrian Canadians. I need somebody to like have a conversation with, you know? So write your damn novel. I'm sure it will be fantastic. All right. Hi Ray Sammy, hi Habibi. Pretty much still struggling sometimes. I have no idea what you're referring to, but sure. Joelle, I found your writing respected the integrity of the experience, intensity of the situation, of the character experience. This is very difficult. Bravo. Thank you. I appreciate it. Thank you very much. I agree what you said. Not to say that I want to turn a blind eye to life experiences and traumas. I agree. Thank you, Robert. Robert, I can't read Arabic. I just mentioned a million things that are in English. Can you post the title of those books, please? And be honest, I never met anyone Syrian in Ottawa. There's clearly so many different people in Ottawa that deserve to meet. There, when I went to Ottawa, I met like a group of 20 Syrians or something, and they were so nice. Oh my god, we ate the best food, we had the best evenings. I am so thankful for those Syrian folks in Ottawa, that community. I wish I can like stay here in Vancouver but go visit them every weekend. Oh my god, I love them so much. Describe briefly your day as a writer during COVID-19, despite the fridge not far from your oh my god, despite the fridge not far from your office. Okay, so I exercise every day, and my exercise is a walk to the fridge where I eat. I literally stuff my face with food. I gained a good 10 pounds, no, 10 kilos, so around 18 pounds since the beginning of this fucking sorry, excuse me, this freaking quarantine. And I'm mad about it because I was such on track for a good results at the gym. Anyway, you're in my office right now. I wake up, I drink my coffee, and then I drink some more coffee, and then I spend the whole day drinking coffee. I have my little screen right here, and my screen notes. I have my notes on paper. Oh, fudge. Like for example, avoid ing verbs, which is something that I do quite a lot. I say he was sitting instead of he sat. He was eating instead of he ate, which is stupid. So I'm avoiding ing verbs. I write, and then I get bored, and then I play my Switch, and then I go back to writing, and then I get bored again, and then I go back to my Switch, and then we make dinner and we watch RuPaul's Drag Race. That's my day. um, all right. Simi is suggesting a book called The Lover, which is by Laurie Silvers. I will definitely check that out. I feel like we have been talking for a long time. I feel like we're getting a lot of fantastic comments. So thank you for talking to me rather than me talking to the walls. I feel blessed and highly flavored. Highly favored, sorry. That's also flavored. I also smell nice. You can't see that, but I actually smell nice. I'm going to end this on a high note. I'm going to read you some from I've never heard before short story that I decided to share with you. It's called The Tale of Raja and His Geckos, and it's going to be part of the Syrian Survival Notebook. I'm also going to read the first couple of pages and then stop, and that would be the end of our hangout together today. All right? Cool. Awesome. Let's do this. Raja was best known for his long walks on the beach, finding forgotten treasures and lost golden rings, and gathering empty bullet shells. He was the one who returned Mariam's wedding ring, ending a possible feud between the young school teacher and Saad's mother, who never thought Mariam was good enough for her son. He was the one who returned the branded sunglasses of Samir the barber, who bought them for a small fortune in Damascus, only to lose them on the beach after getting drunk with his friends one late afternoon. He was the one who returned the necklace Fatima lost which was a gift from her mother, who inherited it from her grandmother. The teenage girl was saving to replace the missing heirloom before her parents find out that she lost it, but Raja's find allowed her to use the saved money to buy herself a television set from the small shop in the market stretch by the sea, owned by a Christian lady no one can pronounce her name. Weeks and sometimes months after a treasured item was lost, Raja would knock on the door of whomever suffered the loss, even without prior knowledge, and wait politely with his back to the door until it was opened. Then open his palm and reveal his find. Women would invite the 16-year-old to come in and eat a dessert as a sign of appreciation, and men would offer to pay him for his troubles. He always smiled politely and walked away without uttering a word. When he was younger, the townspeople in his coastal village didn't like Raja. They were wary about his eye patch covering his right eye and brooded of the gecko that lived exclusively on Raja's shoulder and stuck out its tongue and wiggled it joyfully whenever it saw another human. Raja only spoke when he felt like it. The other villagers knew he hated small talk, which didn't gather him much favor with his people. But since his father got him a metal detector from Damascus, and he got into the habit of finding lost and loved items on the beach and returning them to their rightful owners, his neighbors warmed up to him. They spread the good word about him across the town. Samir refused to charge him for haircuts for weeks and repeated the wondrous story of Raja's find to all of his clients, young and old. Saad invited Raja to smoke argile and drink raki with the other boys in the main square cafe, where all the men of the village gathered to watch the news about the civil war in Syria on large flat screens and play backgammon until the early hours of Friday mornings. Fatima, when she ran into Raja on the beach, where on where no one was looking, planted a thankful kiss on his left cheek, and ran down the hilly road, avoiding looking back. That morning, however, Raja's new find was a complete surprise. His little metal detector beeped, and its needle hit the red zone on its dial. He wondered if someone has forgotten a cooking pot on the beach after a lazy picnic the night before, or an old anchor from one of his father's ships had beached on the shore. He followed the beeping it got sorry. He followed the beeping as it got stronger towards what looked like a small dun of sand, until the metal detector became inconsolable and he had to turn it off. He walked around the small dun, examining it. It looked like a tiny hill of sand made by childish waves of the sea. Maybe the sand dun was covering a forgotten treasure from back in the Ottoman times, or even the days of the Phoenicians. Maybe it was a chest filled with golden coins and silver candelabras. He started to dust the sand off the top of the dun and slowly uncovered what looked like a metallic colored flat desk tilted to its side. No one owned a dog in this town, he knew it. This was not a flying frisbee like the ones he saw on television, chased by large hairy dogs that he never saw in real life. Raja's gecko started hissing, and it tapped repeatedly on its tail on the forearms and forehands of Raja's face. But that didn't make sense. Let me repeat that. Raja's gecko started hissing, and it tapped repeatedly with its tail and its forearms on Raja's face. But Raja was busy examining his find. He attempted to pull the metal frisbee out of the sand, but it was dug deep. He pushed the sand with his palms away from the metal object and dug his left arm down to his elbow, attempting to grab the frisbee by its core and pull it out swiftly. That was when he unintentionally hit the bomb trigger with his palm. All right, that's enough of that. And as I said, this is the last of our hangout together. I have been with you for a bit over an hour. I hope you enjoyed your time. Thank you again to Max Ottawa for offering me the space to come in and say hello to you. Please and thank you. There is really early in this chat, there's an English and a French evaluation for this service. It also tells me that if I did good, it also tells them that I didn't suck. So if you enjoyed your time, please click on the Survey Monkey link. It is going to take you a minute or two. It's a quick evaluation. Overall, I enjoyed my time. I hope you did too. And thank you for hosting me. And wash your hands. Bye.